Hi everyone. Today I want to briefly go over using an RMarkdown file within RStudio. So here I have the session 1 RMarkdown that I provided on Blackboard, and the first thing you will notice is some metadata for the file, and all Markdown files for this course will include a title and an output. And the output, you want to make sure that it says Word_document. That tells RStudio what to return or what to give you when you knit the RMarkdown document. So we're going to go over how to create a code chunk and read in a file. So in the assignment, I had these code chunks that gave you the eval equals false options in some of these. And the reason for adding that is so that when you create your knitted document, these code lines don't get run. These were mostly for demonstration purposes, for you to run on your own. And the code chunks that I want you to create are the ones where you use the shortcuts in RStudio, or you create a new code chunk that includes code that actually works. So this is some pseudocode here that I provided in the example when either choosing a file or locating your file using a path. And what I wanted you to do is to create your own either object or your own read.csv call in the RMarkdown file. So I'm going to go over, give you some basic functions to use to locate files, and how to point to a particular file on your system. So a good one to know is getWD, and it stands for Get Working Directory, and that tells you where R is working out of, in what folder R is looking into, so that you can get an idea of what files you can access relatively easily. So when I opened RStudio and I opened the RMD file, my RMD file was in this rprog intro folder, and anything inside that folder is readily available to my RMD file. So there are different types of paths. One is absolute paths, and the other is relative paths. So relative paths are shorter because they're relative to the current folder that you're in. So another function that you can look at is the dir function, and that will tell you all the files in the current directory, or in the working directory. So these technically are relative paths because they belong in this folder that above here, rprog intro. So, and if you want to get an absolute path, I provided the choose file function, which allows you to look for a file and get the full it's actually file choose, sorry. So if you run file choose interactively, you can find the file and select open. So notice that I'm working out of the console, and that I'm doing all of this interactively, but for the document you want to write code that works when you knit the document. So an idea to work off of is using this file choose function to create a CSV. So if I were doing this interactively, and if I were writing a script, maybe I would run file choose just to find my document and get the absolute path to that data set, and then use that in a subsequent code chunk like down here. So you don't have to use eval equals false. You can create a new one with your absolute path to this dr French m.csv, and that will tell R where to look for the data set. So notice that here I'm creating my CSV, which is an object. It is just a character vector or a character scalar at this point. It's only a string. It's not really a file. You can do, so let me run this and control enter and do class my CSV, and you'll notice that this is a character. It's not a file, it's just a pointer to a file. So in order to use it, we want to put it inside the read.csv function, which accepts a character vector here. So you can either do it like this. If this data set is in the same folder that you're running your RMarkdown document, it will be able to find it without a problem. If it's in a different folder, then you can certainly use the object that you just created. So I would do read.csv my CSV. All right. So this is very important. This is being able to replace or substitute things within R is extremely important, because that's how the language works here. So instead of providing a character vector, I gave it the object, which is essentially a character vector, my CSV. So if I do that and I can run this interactively, it will load in my data set. So I can also write it like this and run the document, and it will be able to find the data set. So you can do knit, and that will give you the knitted document. In my case, it saves it as a docx file, and I have to open it using LibreOffice, which I'm using Linux, so this is a slightly different setup than most of you. So, but the output is the same, right? It's a document, a Word document, and you can see how these code chunks that didn't have eval equals false are run, and you can see the output of these code chunks here in the document. You don't want to do this. Maybe you want to just assign it to an object. I remember how we assign things. You use the arrow. So if you're going to be working with this data set, then you do dr French gets read.csv. Okay. So this is how you would assign it, and then work off of dr French, which is the new object in the environment. Okay, so those are the basics that I wanted to cover for using RMarkdown. I noticed that a lot of students had some difficulty finding their file and making it work when knitting. So make sure that it's in the same folder and that you're referencing the data set correctly. So if it's in the same folder, you can use the simplified relative path, which is just the name of the file, or you can give it the full path name.